We have heard a lot of criticism that the Ukrainian armed forces are advancing in the wrong place and in the wrong way. That they are operating with too small forces, that they need to use larger formations and in a more concentrated manner, and many other things said by people who would not even dare to start what the Ukrainian soldiers are doing. Let's assume that the AFU launched an offensive with entire brigades, a large-scale assault by large ground forces with limited air support, with the occupants having tenfold superiority in the air. Without the necessary number of tactical air defense systems to cover the advancing troops. Through minefields, head-on, taking into account all the things I have already told you many times. You can imagine the result. I don't understand why theorists don't have enough imagination to paint this picture in their heads. This was the rose-colored dream of the Russian occupiers. They just bring up the air force and wreck the whole thing in a short period of time, and it's all over very quickly. Insane human casualties, destroyed equipment and a cross on the further prospect of de-occupation of the south. Wonderful prospects, but only for the occupiers. And now compare what the Russian aviation, for all its superiority, is actually doing. It hunts for small groups of AFU and individual units of equipment, fires on roads when there is no one there. The Ukrainians have long and widely used the so-called small group tactics. This applies to both men and equipment. Accordingly, Russian aviation is chasing them, dropping tons of bombs every day, and the offensive is still going on. From the very beginning of the campaign, the AFU found itself in a situation where they don't even have parity in the air. So there was a choice. Not to offensive at all, or to act as one can act at all under the circumstances. The option that the theorists talk about simply does not exist for the Ukrainian defense forces for the reasons described above. If the Ukrainian side had parity in the air, perhaps we would see a different type of offensive. Maybe it would have been faster, maybe the stormtroopers would be easier. But Ukraine has a certain material base and the aggressor has more resources. He entrenched himself while Ukraine was waiting for political decisions from its allies and the supply of weapons and ammunition. And the indicator of success of the AFU actions is not only in the form of advancement and losses of the enemy, but also in how desperately Russian propaganda is trying to enforce the narrative about the insane losses of the AFU. To demoralize Ukrainians and discourage allies from helping. This is part of their military doctrine, an indirect means of pressure on the victim of aggression, a bluff of sorts. Yes, in war there cannot be no casualties, and even one dead brother in arms is a lot. But if it were as the occupants say, Ukraine would have no more combat-ready units left. It is a pity that we have to explain obvious things to many people in the world. That the Ukrainian armed forces will not conduct such operations quickly without airplanes. No one can. Explaining that Ukrainian assault forces have significantly fewer resources than the enemy in defense. This should be understood by theorists who believe that the offensive should be large forces. At the same time, the theory says that there should be proper air support, which there is not. But I hope that common sense will prevail in the world and we will have an adequate perception of the situation, and understanding of the need to support Ukraine's fight against a threat that openly declares its appetites that go far beyond Ukraine. By the way, what are your thoughts on President Biden's refusal to provide ATACMS in the upcoming package?